forgot how bad it looks.
I've seen worse.
Greetings, fellow mortals. Just a reminder, saying it's just my opinion is for cowards. So the new Captain America film came out, and I have to say that it is the single most okay film that I have seen in a while. I give it a range of about a 4 to 6 out of 10, meaning there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but also it's really not that memorable in any way.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, look right here.
People act like that score range is an absolute failure, but it's really not, because almost every single film ever made falls within that range. Spurgeon's Law, 90% of everything is absolute crap, but the 10% that's good, it's worth going through that 90% to get to it.
Pretty gruesome, huh?
I've seen worse.
I think the most frustrating aspect of the new Captain America movie is that it's just okay, while the other Captain America films are absolute gems. They're not only good MCU films, they're also good movies in and of themselves. If you wanted to, you could watch the entire Captain America trilogy back to back to back with very minor interference from the Avengers films, which kind of says something about Age of Ultron, about the fact that you could basically skip it and not miss a whole lot.
How could you be worthy?
Who are you? Who are you?
And actually, Age of Ultron is a good comparison, because the new Captain America film is in fact very skippable. There's a sense about the people behind the scenes and some of the actors themselves that they really don't seem like they want to be there at all doing any of this.
Look carefully at the "I really wish I weren't here right now" button.
This doesn't seem to be a passion project for anyone involved. It's just a job, and a job that they don't particularly like. There is a sense of the show must go on, that the MCU must continue, so here we are doing this again. And I think that's the biggest problem with the MCU overall at this point, is that it just has to keep going, even though there's really not any reason for it.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
There's no longer a sense of, I have a story that I have to tell, and if I keep it inside of me any longer, I'm going to explode. Instead, there's a sense of, oh, we have to find another story to keep this going, even though it's basically done. And I'm so glad that they're doing this with the new Captain America. It's not like there's 50 different stories I could name off the top of my head that would be very unique to his character.
Your gasps intrigue me. Explain.
But no, it was just time for a new Captain America film. So all the corpos involved threw a bunch of writers and a director onto this and said, hey, make something. How does it tie into what came before? We don't care. How does it tie into what's about to come next? We don't know.
You know, like, fighting, I don't know, like, never know, you know, like.
So people who have no idea what the other current projects are doing have to do their best to make a film that ties in everything that came before, everything that's going on now, and everything that's about to happen. All the while not knowing anything that's going to happen after this, because no one knows. And when they did make a film that tried to do all of this, the corpos involved said, no, not that one, redo it again. No, redo it again. No, redo it again, for about like 4 different times.
And over and over.
Okay, Clay, I get the point.
No, you don't.
And each time, everyone involved got angrier and angrier and more frustrated, to the point where you can tell that they didn't want to be working on this film anymore. So maybe that's why I'm being so kind to it, because it's kind of a miracle that it turned out as well as it did.
Airbag's a little slow. But that's what these tests are for!
And that leads to the biggest issue that Marvel and Disney are facing right now, in the fact that no one knows exactly what's going to happen or where they're going or what the point is. There's no longer an end game, there's no longer an overarching story. New projects need to come out that loosely ties into everything else, so they can make more projects in the future which loosely ties into everything else, even though it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore.
Does that make sense? Ladies and gentlemen, I am not making any sense. None of this makes sense.
Look, I don't really have an emotional attachment to this anymore. I've overcome the sunk cost fallacy. I'm looking at this as an exercise in writing and what to learn and how to avoid future mistakes myself. And the biggest lesson I've learned from this is that you can't go from a heavily planned storyline to having no idea what you're doing and just throwing things out there to see what works.
Well, that didn't work.
There's a big difference between now, where the MCU admittedly has a list of films and shows that are going to come out, compared to the past, where they had a bunch of different projects which all tied into each other and built to an overarching story.
Take a look at this. Jesus Christ, that right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay?
You can tell by the constant reshoots and how the plans change from year to year, month to month, week to week, and even sometimes day to day, that they have no idea where they're going. I figured out that they had no idea what they're doing when they fired the actor who played Kang, and instead of just recasting him and using the multiverse excuse, they decided to bring back Robert Downey Jr. in order to play Dr. Doom.
What the hell is this?
Now you could argue that Disney couldn't exactly keep Jonathan Myers around because he was in fact found guilty of assault and harassment, but like I said, just recast him. It would have been very simple to do.
Oh, it's so obvious. I would have never thought of that.
But they decided to throw it all away because they really don't have a plan. They might have a vague idea about where they're going in the future and what projects they might want to come out, but how it ties in and how it makes a coherent story doesn't matter anymore. They've shifted from having a meticulous plan that builds up to an end game to just throwing everything out there and hoping that it sticks and just writing by the seat of their pants. The argument of planning versus pantsing is something that's happened for a long time in writing. In the creative process, there are 4 basic steps: plan, write, rewrite, edit.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
And this can vaguely fit in with almost every single type of creative field. You have to plan what you're going to do beforehand. You need to do a rough draft of it. You need to redo the rough draft and then fix all of the different mistakes that you made. The big debate is how much time you should put into each step of the creative process. Do you plan a lot to make the next steps easier, or do you keep planning to a minimum in order to allow your creative juices to flow and you don't feel stifled as you're writing?
Well, I guess a P.O. box could, in theory, break the chain.
Don't you have a paper to write?
And the answer is that it's complicated, and the same strategy won't work for 2 different people. One writer might be completely lost if they didn't have a meticulous list of notes written out in front of them. At the same time, someone else would feel creatively stifled and stuck if they had a list of notes telling them what they needed to do.
I'm free. What the hell is that?
If you want a good example from the MCU itself, look at Ant-Man. There was a lot of conflicts with directors and Disney as their visions for the film clashed.
You can't just...
There was a lot of different arguments about Disney stifling directors at the time, that they couldn't be unique, that they couldn't be interesting, and that every film had to be the exact same. And you know what? That argument is very fair. Pre-Endgame, all of the different MCU films are very similar in tone, in pacing, and in appearance.
How can this be for the greater good?
The greater good.
And if someone argued that the sameness of it all was boring to them, I couldn't really argue with that because it is very similar. If you do not like what they were doing, then you weren't going to like any different parts of it. But at the same time, it did build up one coherent, massive story that had an epic conclusion that everyone adored.
I've only had Arlo for a day and a half, but if anything happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself.
In comparison, post-Endgame movies and films do have a lot of creative differences. They can be unique, they can be interesting in that way, but they really don't connect well at all, and they definitely don't build to one coherent story.
So I am confusion. Why is this one Kansas, but this one is not Arkansas?
They've done a complete 180 on their style. Originally, they were so anal about their meticulous planning that they were annoying directors and not letting them show any creativity whatsoever. They were just basic cogs in the machine. And now they let anyone do anything that they want, but when it doesn't end up fitting with what came before and what they think they might do in the future, they just tell the people involved to redo everything, leading to even more frustration.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
And you know what? I like the idea of corpos just throwing money at people to be creative and do something unique, but this is also part of an overarching story, and it doesn't exactly fit well with the tale trying to be told.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong.
It reminds me a lot about the DC films before they hired James Gunn to run everything. From now on, all of the different DC films and shows are going to have one similar tone and one similar vision.
How can this be for the greater good? Shut it!
And if you don't like this style, if you don't like James Gunn as a creator, then you are going to absolutely hate everything. But I would argue at least you know what you're getting into. Back before James Gunn, you never exactly knew how a DC film was going to go. It could be the Joker or it could be the Flash.
This is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
It could be the Batman, or it could be one of the Aquaman films with Amber Heard. Will it be good? I have absolutely no idea, but it all will be consistent for the most part, so that's a positive. There won't be a Justice League debacle where the two different halves of the film don't match up in tone whatsoever.
Your alignment is pathetic. The angles were completely off. Another 30 minutes.
Will the new Superman film be good? I have no idea, but I am interested in it, which is a lot more than I could say for the current MCU stuff coming out this year. I mean, the Thunderbolts and the Fantastic Four. The only character I care about from the Thunderbolts is the Winter Soldier, and he's not even going to be in charge of the group, so who cares? It's a definite skip, and there really hasn't been a good Fantastic Four film, so that doesn't exactly fill me with hope.
Whoa! That's interesting, but I sure don't care.
They need to go back to a planning style for the MCU because this pantsing stuff is not working in any way whatsoever. It can work with individual projects that don't tie into each other at all, but if we're creating an overarching story that plans to go forever, yeah, you need to have a plan.
I got a plan, John. You always got a plan, Dutch.
There's a big difference between someone making a giant series with books the size of my computer compared to, oh, I don't know, a short story. Maybe the longer a tale is and the more work you have to put into it means that you should probably plan ahead instead of just going by the seat of your pants. Because when you're stuck in the middle and you realize, hey, I don't know where I'm going and what I'm doing right now doesn't fit in well with what came before, you're gonna be stuck. And boy, does that sound familiar. Look, I don't have emotional ties with the MCU anymore, but I like looking at it from a learning perspective. And there is a lot to be learned from what they're doing right now. But what do you think? Am I wrong about the new Captain America film? Did you think it was amazing? Did you think it was terrible? Do you think that I'm an idiot for this perspective? Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you disagree with everything I have to say, that is perfectly fine. After all, everyone is entitled to their objectively wrong opinion.
What else is on?
Yeah, let's see what else.
Where's the TV guy?
Thank you all so much for watching.
You're still here?
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. You bye. Boom.
Do not despair.